Are you a tech founder or do you intend to be one? Would you like to know how fund is raised within the tech ecosystem? Do you know whether there are fraudulent activities or whether they are real? These are the things that I will be discussing today. I am the Grandmaster and I'll be your chief host today. Welcome to another episode of Hard Knocks, where we talk about life issues. We talk about the society, the people, businesses, and social media trends. And to join me today on set in discussing this topic, I have a lawyer who is well versed with the activities of the tech ecosystem and who has been actively involved. To my right is my guest.
Hello, everyone. My name is Titilayo Aino Scott. I'm the managing partner, Scott's Legal. Scott's Legal is a twin law firm. We have the technology and innovation aspect that services players in the tech space and the commercial and dispute resolution that services players in other industries. I've been a lawyer for 17 years and I've been in the tech space for more than 5 years now. I think I'm well suited to discuss this topic and I'm looking forward to having this discussion. Thank you.
And to my further right, I have my co-host.
Usual suspect, Ode. This topic is long overdue, and like we always do on this podcast, we want to delve into those less entertaining topics, but we want to share a lot of knowledge so that people learn. I know that we've had notorious cases over time. Some are well known. Let's really look at what has happened. Is it just a case of people having stereotyped Nigerians, or Africa as any good scheme or whatever that comes, or industry that springs up? We are always a suspect that will try to do some backhand practices. So I believe this topic is long overdue, and alongside my chief host and our guest, will be doing justice to the topic.
A whole lot has been happening within the tech ecosystem. A lot of accusations have been flying around that there are fraudulent activities, and founders in the quest for raising funds can go to any length. Now, some make promises to them with the intentions that, okay, we're going to do this. And there are some that they have no intention of giving you for any fund, or there's no fund anywhere. But they will still lie to you that they have access to people that can give you funds. They want to do this. They want to do that. They promise you heaven and earth. Now, if you look at all of this, talking to you now, if you look at all of this, how do you think the industry is really faring in this area in terms of funding, in terms of the truthfulness on the part of investors? We've heard of cases of people's companies being taken over at the end of the day. And some, their reputation are at stake because they expected funds from somewhere which they intended to use to carry out certain things, but they could not. So what would you say about all of this?
Okay, thank you, GM. I'm going to approach your question from two different angles. Because when we talk about tech funding, there are two major parties involved, the investors and the startups themselves. When we talk about fraudulent activities in that sense, there's no need labeling the tech ecosystem as fraudulent, because there are a lot of tech startups that are doing very well. MoneyPoint, Flutterwave, so many businesses are doing very well. So, but we want to look at some other areas where, maybe the spotlight might not be too much on them. So we're talking about investors and startups. I'll start from the startup angle. When people have startups, and they are focused a lot of the times because of the whole rave of the tech ecosystem. People start businesses without any intention of doing business as such. They start businesses with the intention of raising funds. So they start up an idea. They have an idea, a tech idea, and the only thing they are looking for is how to raise funds. And once they get that funding, that is the end of the company. So that is the issue on the part of the startups. Ode mentioned Nigeria. Whether we are being, stereotyped as maybe we are fraudulent. I'm not going to start with Nigeria. I'm going to start with one of the biggest frauds in the tech ecosystem, which was Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. She raised over $700 million. Wow. And the entire company was fraudulent. They projected themselves as a startup that had a machine that could do hundreds of blood tests, by just taking blood samples without the vena puncture, the puncturing your hand, with just drops of the blood. They said that their machine can do, and it was all a fraudulent scheme. She was very charismatic. Investors didn't do any due diligence. Everybody was putting in money into the business without validating our claims about the machine. It was much later that it was now found out that they were doing a lot of confidentiality agreements. So nobody was saying anything about what was going on. Later, employees now started blowing the whistle, and they found out that everything was just a fraud. And that was $700 million gone down the drain. She's in prison now, but that is the kind of thing that happens in the tech ecosystem. And she's not the only one. She's the most popular because everybody was taken away, just like one of your MMM schemes. So she took everybody. I mean, real investors put money into that business. So what usually happens is that these businesses, they have no intention of selling anything. They have no intentions of doing any business. They only come into the space. I play in the tech space. So I also have clients who, I have a client who, I kept telling him, I'm like, look, what are you guys doing? Are you publicizing? They are not doing anything, with due respect. But they were not doing anything. They were all just about looking for the funds. And I'm like, you can't just be looking for funds. What exactly do you want to sell? You have a good business idea. You are not even trying to sell it. You are not trying to make money from the business. All you are about is, how do we secure funding? Now, don't get me wrong. Funding is necessary for business. It's necessary to secure funds. But you can start, small, get customers, be selling your whatever it is your product is, and making some money, and then let the investors see the track record. So that's the challenge, when it comes to the startups in the ecosystem. For investors, yes, there are fraud related cases for investors also, where they will tell the startups, all you need to do is to maybe like a registration fee of $10,000. Once you pay that $10,000, you'll be able to access funding here and there. But all those things are just schemes. They are only about what they are going to collect from you. They don't even have any intention of getting you the funding that you require. So the fraud in that sense is two ways, is both on the part of the investors and also on the part of the founders themselves.
Well, are there no red flags maybe on the part of the investors? Now, if I'm going to invest my money in a particular scheme, I should have done my own due diligence and ensure that, okay, I'm good to go. There should be some red flags that should show that, okay, these guys are actually up to something, or they have no intention of doing business other than getting funding. So I'm talking about the two parties now, both the founder and the investors. What are the red flags that we should look out for to say, okay, I don't think this will work?
Okay. Thank you, GM, for that question. It looks like common sense that, we should be able to look at a business, look at the metrics, and determine whether or not they're a serious business. But how is funding secured in the tech ecosystem? Pitch. So people sit like this. Somebody comes to pitch an idea, and I will say, I'm going to give it on $1 million. Just by a pitch. 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes pitch. You are done. And I'm sure you watch, what's that? Lions Den, where they would, you come and pitch your business idea, and then the investor will say, I'll give you, I'm going to invest. Just by talking. So that's the way funding is secured.
But now, using the Lions Den, sorry to cut you there, why those guys saying, I'm going to give you 10, I'm going to give you whatever, invest in your business, don't they do certain background checks? Do you understand? Will they just dole out the funds?
Well, from what we can see, because Lions Den is not the only pitching session. There are a lot of pitching sessions that go on almost on a daily basis. Even when you have some competitions, they will pitch, the people will get to the top, maybe like top 10, top 5, and then they'll say the star prize for whoever does well. No background check is done. No background check is done. At the pitching stage, no background check is done. They just say, okay, this person pitched the best, and then this person deserves the money. And so that's how, A lot. Now, I'm not saying that pitching is the only way
Way.
investors put money in businesses, but a lot of the times, the issue about pitching. I mean, did Dangote pitch to anybody? In looking for, funding, he will talk to funders. They will look at the metrics. They will look at the business. They will look at the all his numbers before giving him the money. But these days, when you're talking about the tech ecosystem, because the truth is that because tech, the startups, it's about ideas, how you can use technology to further, things around the world. So a lot of the times, the tech startups themselves, they don't have the money, but they have good ideas. And because of some of the success stories that we have already had, Facebook, Google, some of those success stories that, tech has, and they talk in billions of dollars. So because of that, that's what, that's the lacks in the system that allows people to just give out money to, because they think it's a good idea and it might become the next Facebook. It might become the next Google. So that's the way venture capitalists think.
I think it's a risk on their part. For example, if I have to invest my money, I think I look at Ode now. What has Ode done with his own business? Maybe to a certain extent, I've seen that, okay, he's been able to build his business up to this level on his own. Now, if I feel that, okay, I can invest my money into this business because I've seen his track record, unlike somebody who is just coming to pitch an idea. Fine, I can invest into an idea if I feel that, okay, this idea will really crystallize into something big, but it's a risk. So it now depends on how much risk you are willing to take. Would you like to go with someone who has an established business or someone who just have an idea and you feel investing into it will turn out to be something big?
Okay, well, the truth, GM, the truth is that you have also touched on some of the things we're talking about. You have said, well, if maybe somebody pitches and you think, by saying, if you think, if I think it's a good idea, you have taken away a lot of things. Who is the person pitching? What business education does he have? How can he run a business? A lot of things have been taken away from just that idea that, well, if somebody pitches a good idea to me, definitely, I'm not saying that pitching is wrong. People can pitch ideas and they are very good. They have very good intentions and they intend to actually go through with the business. But the truth is that you have admitted now that if somebody pitches a good idea, you might, but it's a risk, which is the issue with venture capitalist funds. Venture capitalist funds, a lot of the time, the venture capitalists, they are not the owners of the fund. They source funding from different people. They just put it in businesses and then looking forward to it making money. But I think a fundamental idea behind venture capitalist funds is that they know at the back of their mind that not all the monies they give out will yield. So they in their minds, they think, okay, well, I'm looking for the one that would yield. Like you said, it's a risk. They'll put money here, hoping that one of those, because one of the fundamental rules in venture capital is that you can invest in 10 companies and none of them will give you any yield. And invest in just one company and it will become, someone like Canva. Look at, for a very long time, she kept looking for funding and all that. And look at what she has now. Those who invested in her would probably be taking a lot of returns now. So that's what they believe, that only one company can give you the yield of all the monies you have put in different companies. So maybe one of the things that that encourages that just giving people money is the fact that, well, at the back of the mind of the venture capitalist is thinking, well, this money might not yield too much, but at least let me, it's a risk. Let me put it in. So maybe that is why.
So I'm looking at, because we are talking about risk and then maybe there's no enough background check and the money just comes out from maybe pitching. Within our own ecosystem, is there enough political and legal structure to help, let's say, would-be investors? And because I'm seeing that there is an effect of this in terms of how many people are willing to commit to, especially in a country like ours where talent abounds, whether you like it or not, right? But access to these funds could be limited because investors don't see enough political and legal structure in our ecosystem that will help them combat this thing if it ever happens to them.
Okay, well, the truth is that a lot of the times regulation is very slow. Regulation comes after a lot of times after damage has been done. Look at MMM. MMM had scammed people, a lot of people, of their monies before the clampdown. Even some of these cryptocurrency investments. A lot of the times, regulation is usually slow. It's when even for Terranos in the US, they didn't even regulators did not they didn't investigate our claims about the machine that could do hundreds of tests with just blood spots. So they didn't. So a lot of time regulation is slow. Is because an intelligent person would have thought out a lot of things before even coming into the market. So a lot of times you don't find regulations catching up on these people until the damage has been done. Then people now start running around and putting some checks in place to avoid a repeat of such occurrences.
Okay, so now let's flip it a little bit and see. Are there cases where investors themselves are actually the ones trying to scam these guys, the tech guys? And when I mean that, maybe steal their prototypes and just promise them pseudo investment. And have you encountered such?
Definitely. I think the best case to use to describe that is Health Plus. I don't know. You know Health Plus, the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Now this is not a scam. It was not a scam, but it was just a situation that went out of her. Now, Health Plus was founded by a lady. She had done a lot of. She had built the business to a very large extent. I mean, at least everybody here will say, "I know Health Plus." So at that time, she sought investment, and the funders were going to give her $18 million about that. And the story was that she didn't read the investment agreements properly, because eventually they knocked out. I mean, out of the CEO position, and totally knocked her out of the company. So she started fighting. She went to court. I was there when some of the times when they came to court, trying to, fight that. So yes, you mean sometimes investors they're not stupid. What they want the best from what they are investing their money in. So sometimes they might be out to take over the company, because that's what happened in the case of Health Plus. They eventually took over the company, changed her, and it was our idea. So then you definitely have things like that. Health Plus is usually used as a case study when you are talking about, taking investments without doing much due diligence on the investor themselves. And of course, getting a lawyer to review, your investment agreements to see the pitfalls, the causes that could become harmful. Because of course, what a lawyer does is that when you look at an agreement, you can sometimes you believe that maybe lawyers just want to disturb the transaction, but a lot of times we look more into the future. That look, this clause is going to be a problem later. This particular part might. Yes, it's like marriage. When you are coming together, everybody's lovey-dovey, nothing is wrong. So at the time when the discussions are going on, all of us are looking fine, we're just smiling, maybe eating dinner, and then talking. But eventually, when the push comes to shove, people now start saying, "Where is the agreement?" Because I was in a transaction yesterday, and it looked like a very simple transaction. They said, "Okay, look, we'll give you the contract on paper, so that you can do this, so you can get this. So when you get this, then it's just on paper. So it looks okay that it's just on paper. But what if tomorrow the person says, well, it's on paper, but that is what we signed?"
So that's left to so many interpretations.
Exactly. So as lawyers, we have to look for a way to, guard that transaction, so that when it comes in the future, at that time, everybody's, it looks nice, but then there might be a pitfall in the future. So the problem that some of the startups have is that they are too desperate for the funding. They just want the funding.
So in this case, genuine startups, not those ones that are just looking to elope with cash.
Exactly.
So they are too desperate for the money.
Yes, for the money. So and the investor is able to put a lot of clauses that will probably exploit them. Where they start up, who in the investment contract, the term sheet, they said the liquidation ratio. They said it will be, I think, 1.5x. That is, if they leave, they'll get their money plus another of it and half of it. And we're like,
can you highlight that liquidation ratio just for people that might be, what? So just in case they encounter that clause.
Okay, it's called liquidation preference. No, that is, I mean, when investors are coming in, they are looking at how they will leave in case they want to leave. In case the company encounters any issues, what would happen? So they have liquidation preference of 1x. That is, we live with our investment. If I invest maybe $20,000, I live with $20,000 plus $20,000.
Okay.
So that is the liquidation preference. That's what they prefer. So some investors will ask for 1.5x.
So now my question is, what if the company, as when you want to leave, is not the totality of its assets is not even up to the money invested?
That's a good question. Because a lot of the times, both investors and startups, they don't think of that at the time when they are. Because I was thinking to myself too, actually, that question you asked, when I was looking at that term sheet, I was thinking to myself that, well, this is what I even saying 1.5x. What if at the time when they want to exit, there's nothing available?
Or does the clause, is it company and allied matters add now that says a company is an artificial person, right?
Yeah.
Does that cover for that you're going to liquidate the company only to the extent of its value?
Yes. What I'm saying is that, yes, when you were liquidating, there will be preference of the creditors. The creditors that will take preference.
Okay.
So a lot of the times, investors would already secure themselves in their investment agreement to take preference. But I'm even saying that, what if at the time of liquidation, there's even nothing? There's nothing available. For example, some of these companies like 54 Gene raised over $45 million at the time when they were hot in business. And at the time when they were liquidating, they said they had a lab that I think they're still trying to sell off. But what is the guarantee that they will sell it off at that money? So it's all a loss. It will eventually come to a loss. So, but I'm only trying to use it to say that sometimes the investors will ask for an arm and a leg at the time when they are coming in. And my clients, they didn't have much to say because they need the money.
Okay, let's talk about crowdfunding now. And I'll be using agri-tech as an example now. Now, in the past, we've had agri-techs in Nigeria that will ask people they'll ask for funding.
Mm-hmm.
People contribute, they buy units. Maybe a unit is costing a certain amount of money and you have to buy a minimum of this and that. And we know at some point we're having issues with the agricultural sector, the food shortage that we're experiencing. Okay. So at some point, maybe it became a boom. Now, people invested money into it. Then suddenly, the founders, they took off with the money. Now, the investors are left stranded. It's one thing when you are going into an investment as an individual that, okay, you're negotiating one-on-one. But in this case, it's crowdfunding. It's just like buying shares with some of the Nigerian banks, and then maybe in 5-6 years' time, the value depreciates. You're not getting as much value as you had when you invested. Now, so for such investors now, what is the next line of action for them? How do they recover their money? What is there for them? Maybe within the legal purview of the whole system.
Okay, thank you, GM. I think we're back to the same question about due diligence. A lot of the times, people don't do due diligence, and it's not Nigerian because I've given you a US example, and there are different US examples even from Silicon Valley. There's no due diligence. Now, this agri-tech, we had a client who, it was an agri-tech business also. Their offering was that they will buy a farmland in your name, they will plant plantain, and then they will do the metrics. Then one bunch of plantain is 5 million naira. Maybe 2 bunch of plantain, they gave them all the metrics. So our client invested in business without the lawyer. That's, you only bring a lawyer when there's problem, not before the problem. So it got the land, they started saying grammar. So harvest came. Okay, they sent her a message and said, look, it's harvest time. We did not get as much plantain as we were ought to. Normal. Then the plantain we got, this is it. What do you want us to do with it? Before she could respond, they said, we have sold it. It was about to go bad. We have sold it for much less than our investment. And that all that you have left is maybe 200,000, something like that. An investment of maybe like 2-something million.
So with a lawyer in the picture, such an investor could have been protected.
No, what a lawyer would do is to look at the documents. What are they offering? what are the loopholes? Where can you protect? Where can you show up? I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So the lawyer would help you look at the documents they are presenting, because a lot of times investors are usually they're very happy. Why did MMM succeed in Nigeria? People just like, they are carried away by the promise of ROIs. So they are not thinking straight. But a lawyer would help you look at the document and say, no, they're promising you a land. Do they have the CEO? What's the title they have? Are they the owner? Things like that. So those are the lawyers that's the due diligence will be done by the lawyer to see what they are offering, the practicality of it, the position of the law, and advise you and say, look, this investment, this. So a lot of the time, well, for an investor like that, it's sad. So what we had to do was we wrote them. By the time we wrote a very strong worded letter, and then they agreed to give back our investments. So there was without any profits, because it was I think maybe like 2 or 3 or 4, 5 years down the line. So they now said they will pay it back in installments. They paid it this. And that's how she was. At least she left the place with at least what she put in it. So for such agritech, they have to look at the business very well. Look at the offerings. Look at the promises and see if it is feasible. That's basically it. So a due diligence would have saved them that. Having now fallen into it, well, if we can still run. We do a lot of debt recovery. We can still run after them, threaten them and all, and then they might still be able to give you part of your money. But those are the only options.
So I am looking at now. Let's leave those people that are trying to access funds on fraudulent basis, that they just want to access the funds. Now let's look at those ones that genuinely want to offer value. Do you think that, because in Nigeria, I've come to observe, we have every institution for everything, but it's just that it's either the problem of assessing it, sometimes knowledge that those institutions. So first of all, our research institutes, whether in science and technology, is almost nothing to write home about. Could it be that if those institutions are well strengthened, the need to now, sometimes, first of all, some people are looking for startups are even just to fund the research, right?
Yes.
Sometimes to actually start the business. And we have agencies like, is it the Bank of Industry now that are supposed to invest? So is it because there is a lack of access to these things that people are now looking, and I'm talking about the genuine guys now, they are now looking abroad for some of these investments?
Well, the truth is that the investment that we're talking about, Bank of Industry, we also work with some of the clients that use them. They don't give you more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million. 10, maybe, if your documentations, they don't give you that much money. We're talking about an ecosystem that talks in millions, if not billions of dollars.
So Bank of Industry just exists to service SMEs?
SMEs, yes.
Is that what they are statutorily established to?
Yes.
Wow.
Although they give higher funding, they have some criteria, but a lot of the activities they do really is SME funding. So, but when we're talking about startups that wants to raise now, the truth about it is that a startup might not start out to be fraudulent. For example, 54 Gene that I said, Payday, they probably didn't start out to be fraudulent. But when you get the funding and you start paying yourself $15,000 a month, money that you have not even tried to make, you are paying, and then they're paying all their staff this, so many benefits and all that, and then eventually what happens is that at the end of the day, they run out of money. So that's what happens to some of them. Mismanagement of the funds. That's why, as an investor, you must ask for use of funds. What are you going to use the fund for? Because in one of the transactions I was in, I noticed I was on the startups side. I was not on the investor side, but I noticed that they were not asking for the use of funds. Like, okay, what are you going to use the money for? They were not asking. They were just saying, okay, well, we'll go there. And another thing in startup is the valuation method. You'll be shocked to know that the way we calculate pre-money and post-money valuation is we use the investment itself to calculate the pre-money valuation. So, startup that does not have anything, no assets, nothing, but we use investment sum. So, for example, now
that kind of inflates the
the
value,
value of the company. So, for example, in this case, we had a startup. The founder was going to bring $50,000. So, to calculate pre-money valuation, we use the investment sum divided by the percentage that they're going to take, which is 10%. And the value of the company came to $500,000. A company that they don't even have anything.
So are this now so I'm looking at it, our lawyers not complicit because you are telling us you calculated it for them.
No, we are not complicit. You can take your phone now and Google pre-money valuation. Okay. That is how it's calculated.
What about the founder having the social capital, being his own personality? Probably there are other things that he has done in the past that will serve as a reference point.
What is the value of that?
Well, maybe it depends on the industry he's operating. Now, if he has done something similar and is starting off another business and has been successful at previous ones, for example, a Dangote now, if a Dangote is reaching out to someone, he will always utilize the social capital to say, okay, I've done this before, even it's well known. So valuation will be higher on that in that regard. Don't you think so?
Well, the truth is that my personal opinion, like I said, I don't believe in the way valuation is calculated in the startup ecosystem. I don't believe in it because I believe it's phony, it's false. Because like I said, with our client, we arrived at a valuation of $500,000. So, but definitely your background can give you access to some things. If you have a pedigree and they say, okay, well, this person has done this, he has done this, and definitely he has a background. We'll be able to manage these funds. That's even okay. At least you can justify the investors' decision to.
But where I want to agree with you now is when push comes to shove, a lot of those people will not utilize their social capital to save this investment. That if it ever gets to the point where it's dying, and then because at that point that's where you now understand that the company is an artificial person on its own. So nobody will want to commit to taking up the debt of that company to the extent that it will eat up into their own funds. I don't know. Maybe they do that just to gain a little bit of leverage to acquire those funds. I just think
someone that would do that would be someone who has integrity. Because I observed the distinction you're trying to make, and I think I appreciate it, about the company being a legal entity on its own, separate from its founders. So that's the reason why buying equity, because investors they buy equity, and that's the reason why a lot of the times they can't get that money back. And personally, now I'm not anti-startup, but personally, I advise investors to do convertible notes, convertible debts. It's a debt that can be converted to equity at a later time, given different parameters. So because that way it puts the startup on its toes that we have a debt running.
Can you give us an example of convertible debts?
Yeah, it's an instrument of investment. Convertible note or convertible debt is what's called. It's an instrument of investment where the investor puts in money. It's a debt that is accruing interest.
Okay.
Then at a later date, they can convert it to equity.
Okay, in terms of maybe use it to get shares into
the
that
company. Exactly.
Okay.
So unlike when you maybe just put equity, you buy equity, 10% equity, because the money is in the company. Whatever happens to the company happens to that money.
If the money doesn't appreciate over time,
that's the end of it.
So
you can't even hold the owners, the founders. You can't hold them.
So that's for the investors safeguarding his own investment.
His own investment, yeah.
Yeah. So what about the founders? How do they safeguard their own investment as well?
Well, the truth about it is that I believe now, Walure is a business. It didn't start today. And I run a business too. I'm a law firm, but I run a business. I have employees. And in business, there's just the desire to succeed. There's the desire, to make money. So I think startups should focus on providing value and making money. Because there's something also called customer capital, where it's your customers that are funding the business, which is what a lot of people do. But in the startup ecosystem, it's not like that. A lot of times they take money that they don't even need. Why would you take $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $45 million? For what?
Just because they have access to it.
Exactly. So because they have access to it, they take, because normal business principles. I'm a businesswoman. I do business every day. Yes, I'm a lawyer, like I said. But I have to pay my staff, I have to pay my rent. I know I have to make money. So, but I won't not to wake up one morning and say, I want to take $1 million into my business. What am I going to do with it? You understand? So, but because they have those monies in venture capital, they have funds that they want to invest, because the venture capital is also under an obligation to invest the money of its partners. They have to invest the money in businesses. So they are looking for where to put the money so that it can yield. But it doesn't mean you have to take the money. So because when you take the money, and that's what happens, once they take the money, they just start paying salaries, and then they are not looking to making, money from their customers, which is what the focus of any business should be.
Customer acquisition.
Exactly.
First.
Customer acquisition, customer capital. Let your customers fund your business. If you now need, of course, we know that there are a lot of, like some people say that you can't do business genuinely without taking funding. Agreed. But the funding will now be maybe to expand, to maybe new market acquisition, to go and acquire new customers and all that. That will be what the funding is for. Not just that you don't have anything, just collect money.
So this year alone, right? Considering our economic climate and everything, how many of these cases, notorious cases in our own country, have we recorded?
Well, the truth is that investor funding has actually dipped because of some of the issues that we have had in the past. Some of the failures we've had, I'm talking about Payday, Pivo, 54 Gene. Some of those, they between 2002, 3. So, and even cases like Terranos, as they brought a lot of investor caution into the market. Not that investors are not, putting in money, but it was not like before where everybody was just excited and just like, I just like this business, just put in money. It's not like before. So I can't really tell how many were recorded. I know people have raised funding this year, but unlike maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, the investor funding has dipped a bit.
Okay, now in all of this, what is the role of government in terms of creating a regulatory framework to guide the actions of both the investors and the founders? For example, I know there is a SEC, there is some other government agencies as well, or regulatory agencies. But in this case, are there government agencies that are directly responsible to this set of people to see that, okay, they can actually regulate the industry or regulate this practice? Also, are there professional bodies as well that can also play that role in their own regard?
Okay, well, the government, the truth is that a lot of what we're talking about is private business. There's not much the government can do about how you run your private business. But when it now comes to the public, for example, SEC you mentioned, if your offering is maybe crowdfunding, so SEC regulates that space so that you don't deceive the public. So a lot of times government comes in to regulate, anything that would affect the public. But if it's a private business, you want to give me money, there's not much the government is going to do about that. It's your own choice. And that's why, investor decision is their own choice. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So that's why due diligence is the key, is the backbone to any investment. Now, CBN regulates, let's look at the fintech as a space now.
Yeah.
CBN regulates fintech, like to that the licenses they must obtain before they can, do business in Nigeria. So definitely, but it doesn't regulate how they source the fund in that sense. It just says, okay, if you're going to get a switching and processing license, this is the requirement before you can operate as a switching. Because, some of those fintech businesses would also affect the public because their offerings are to the public. And if anything happens to maybe any of these maybe digital banks and all that, it will affect the entire public. So those licenses are usually very strict and stringent. But a lot of some, okay, now let me give you an example. There's this, it was a small business Then they decide to obtain a CBN license. I know some of these CBN licenses can be very costly. So I think they got a PSSP or a PTSP. I'm not sure which one now. The one that cost like 250 million. They got CBN to come. Immediately they finish all that. Now, they probably had investors who would have given them that money. But it was all a waste. Why? Because they were not even prepared. They wanted to do the same business that Paystack does. That is, payment. But they were not prepared for the business. After they obtained the license with all the money they had spent, they now did not have customers and laid off all their staff. So the question is, that's a question of mismanagement. You had money, you went to get a CBN license. That's expensive. And then only for you to get them and you are not able to deliver on the business. So a lot of things we're talking about, the government may not be able to regulate it as such because it's private business. But when it comes to the public, anything that will affect the public, the government definitely has a lot of regulation.
But for this case you mentioned now, it's possible that it may have been that they were expecting funding from somewhere that never materializes.
Well, I don't think so, because it was a decision of the company to go and obtain a CBN license. They were doing some small business. I think maybe internet. I'm not sure what they were doing before. They now thought, okay, well, let's go into the payment space. When you see companies like Paystack, you're like, I want to be like this. I want to be Flutterwave and all that. So that decision was what cost it. They spent a lot of money trying to obtain that license. Possibly if they had maybe waited, maybe they had made it a more long-term plan and they had maybe stabilized their primary business, made a lot of money, maybe it wouldn't have told a lot on them. But they spent a lot of money trying to acquire that license. Only for them, having acquired it, they didn't have any customers. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that a lot of times, some of these things are about mismanagement, lack of direction on the part of the founders and some other things like that.
So let's press for time.
Okay, go on.
So, I just want us to touch on this. So when you go to a program like the Lions Den, in fact, I got tired at one point because I was asking, who has ever brought an idea that they accepted? Yeah. And I'm now looking at how can people protect their concept? Because you've come and you've shared your concepts. Yeah. And they are not giving you funds. And somebody who is there or someone seated maybe from home how do you protect, especially when you are seeking for funding for tech in a public space? How do you protect your ideas from intellectual theft?
That's a very good question. Although I'm inclined not to answer it because I have a particular way I do it as a lawyer. So
is that supposed to be a secret?
It's a secret. It's a trade secret. So, but what the truth is that anytime I'm asked this question, this is the same thing I say. I say, look, I have a way I do it as a lawyer. Just something I came because we were also confronted with some of these things. Some of our clients who want to go and pitch to even government establishments, and they're like, how do we protect ourselves? When you go to government, you put your idea. For example, anytime I'm making a presentation, I use about intellectual property. I use this it's this TV Nigeria or something. One company like that. They had an idea about university challenge, and they pitched it to NUC at the time. And NUC said, "I beg, what's nonsense? We're not interested." And just a few times later, NUC and Zain, executed that idea, and it was on TV. And the guy had to go and fight it. So the truth is, what you have said is very real. The fact that when people disclose their business ideas, how can they? Well, the truth, I will only tell you to talk to a lawyer, because it's only a lawyer because, like I said, a lot of times, startups are very excited. They are very, and they might not know the implication of pitching because the truth is, one of my clients told me, look, the truth is, anybody who's going to give me money must have sufficient information about my business before they can give me money. If you go and start telling an investor, I don't want you to do I'm like, leave. What's your idea? Leave. So there's a balance that can be struck where you will not chase away the investor, yet you'll be able to protect. You can use NDAs, but a lot of times some people will not sign NDAs. If you are a small company trying to get funding, you might not be able to get anybody to sign an NDA with you. Like, NDA,
Please break it down. NDA.
sorry, I mean non-disclosure
non-disclosure
agreements.
Yeah.
So where they will
I want
not
to hear that.
disclose, they will not, and non-circumvention, where they will not circumvent your idea. That might be the best way to go about it. But sometimes if you are pitching to, if you are a big company on your own, yes, an NDA will be fine. Just say, well, sign this NDA. You want to give us money, but sign this NDA first. They are really begging to come and invest in your company. But if you're a small fry and you are not telling the investor, I want you to sign the NDA, they're like, are you serious at all? Move. So, but there's usually a way to go about it.
All right. So what would be your parting words to both the founders and funders?
Okay.
What would be your advice to them?
Well, my advice is, well, the first thing I would say to startups is start lean. You don't have to, get all the money. You let your business be focused on being viable, being profitable. I think a lot of us know how to run businesses. But maybe not everybody. At least people selling akara, they want to make money. So we should not make business look like it's one strange thing. It's just what is normal. That maybe somebody just comes and says, okay, I want to start selling plantain. I want to start selling provision. I want to have a provision store and I want to make money. And some of these women, they make a lot of money. All these people, Kodumota, they make money because they know what they're doing. So business is not such a strange thing that now requires, if you want to do business, you want to start up, you even have a tech idea. See how you can, acquire customers, people who will use your product, and then the funding can come in to just assist and build the business and make it much more viable. So start lean, start with what you have. Start, if you are marketing, there are other ways you can do marketing. You can use foot soldiers, you can use social media. Sometimes we don't need some of this money that we are looking for. Exactly. So I think that would help. Then due diligence on the part of the investor and on the part of all the times where things have gone bad is because of lack of proper due diligence. You must, as an investor, they must be diligent to investigate particularly ask for the use of funds. What do you want to use this money for? Let them state it out in very clear terms. If you're giving somebody $25 million, it's not small money now. What does he want to use it for? Let him state it out in very clear terms. And you can see it that, okay, then you follow the money. Are they using it the way they want? They said they will. Is something wrong? Those are some of the things that so on the part of the startup too, if you want to take funding from anybody, ensure that you are diligent. One of our transactions we're on, the reason why the funder, I think, must have gone on with that transaction is because the startup came with a lawyer. We were their lawyers on the transaction. They had their own lawyers. We had meetings. So they will look at you as this person is serious. Don't think that getting a lawyer might scare off the investor. It will show the investor that you are a serious person. So due diligence, we looked at the document for them. Sometimes what you need to know is even the implication of what you are signing. You might eventually sign it, but at least you know that this is what is in the agreement. Because sometimes you have very bulky documents, you didn't even read through it. But if a lawyer is designed to read and understand agreements. So they tell you, okay, these are the things, this is a pitfall. You can look at it and make a decision and say, well, I'll still go on with it. But at least you know at the back of your mind that clause is there so that you know how to avoid it. But for you to be totally ignorant of the clauses in your investment agreement, then you're not doing yourself any good. Bring a lawyer on board. Let them check your document. Let them see the things that they found. Let them, in that particular transaction, we kept on going back and forth with the investor. And I believe that for them to go on with that transaction, they must have appreciated the fact that there were lawyers on that transaction. No, how about this? Why are you saying 1.5x? Why not 1x? And they came back to us and said, this is advise our client. Okay. So I think due diligence is just the way to go.
All right. Thank you very much. You've heard from our guests. As an investor, ensure you conduct your due diligence and show caution where you are putting your money into. And for you as a founder, also don't be in a hurry to expand. Ensure you take a step at a time. It's been an eye-opening session for us today. Thank you for watching. And to my guests, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to have done this.
All right. So hope to see you guys again. Thank you.